The girl in the rain. It was a cold evening. The clouds hung low over the city, and the rain came down not in heavy sheets, but in a soft, steady drizzle that made everything feel slower, heavier. Outside a quiet hospital in downtown Los Angeles, a little girl, no older than 10, sat alone on a concrete bench, her thin dress soaked through, clinging to her small frame. Her eyes were red, and though she tried to wipe her tears away with the back of her hand, they kept falling. She clutched a faded pink backpack to her chest, like it was the only thing left in the world she could hold onto. Nurses walked past. Her. Visitors rushed by with umbrellas. No one stopped. Maybe they thought she was waiting for someone. Maybe they were just too busy with their own pain inside the hospital walls. But she wasn't waiting. She wasn't lost. She had nowhere to go, and she knew exactly where she was. At that same moment, Keanu Reeves was driving himself home. He had finished a quiet day helping out at a charity shelter on the east side of the city. His car, a simple, black, slightly old Mustang he loved for its silence, moved slowly through the wet streets. He wasn't in a hurry. He never was. The world around him rushed, but Keanu had long learned to slow down. That's why he saw her. Most people wouldn't have. He saw her small figure on the bench, soaked and shivering. His foot came off the gas before his mind even made the decision. He turned the car gently into the hospital's visitor lane and parked. A moment passed before he stepped out into the drizzle, pulling up the collar of his coat, his boots splashing gently in the shallow puddles. He walked up to her without saying a word at first. He just stood there. She looked up, startled, then quickly wiped her face and looked down again. "Hi," he said softly. "You okay?" She didn't answer. Her hands tightened around the backpack. Her small shoulders shook again. Maybe from the cold. Maybe from something deeper. Keanu knelt down slowly. Not too close, just enough so they were on the same level. "I'm Keanu," he said. "What's your name?" "Emma," she whispered, barely audible. "Hi, Emma," he said, his voice kind and calm. "Is someone inside? Are you waiting for your mom or dad?" Emma shook her head. She didn't say anything else. Keanu looked around. Still no one paid attention. The world kept moving, even while this small girl sat in the middle of it. Broken. "You're freezing," he said. "Can I get you something warm? Maybe some tea or a blanket from inside?" Emma didn't respond, but when Keanu took off his coat and gently placed it over her shoulders, she didn't resist. She clutched the fabric tightly, her eyes filling again, this time not just with sadness, but with something else. A tiny spark of trust. Keanu sat beside her, both of them quiet. For a long time, the rain fell around them, the hospital doors sliding open and shut behind them, the world unaware of the quiet moment happening just outside. "My mom is inside," Emma finally said. She got sick, real sick, and they said I can't go in anymore." Keanu listened carefully. She wasn't just upset, she was terrified. "What about your dad?" he asked gently. "Don't got one," she said quickly. Never did. Keanu's heart hurt hearing that. There was no one else. She was just a child, sitting outside a hospital in the rain, trying to hold the world together with a backpack and a broken heart. He nodded slowly. "Emma, would it be okay if I stayed here with you for a while?" She didn't say anything, but she didn't say no either, and that was enough. They sat there for another hour. Keanu told her a story about the stars, how even when you can't see them, they're always there, watching, waiting to shine when the clouds finally clear. He told it not like a lesson, but like a secret. Emma listened with quiet wonder, eyes blinking through her tears. She hadn't felt safe in a long time, not until now. Sometime later, a nurse came outside, rushing to the bench. "Emma," the woman called. "We've been looking for you." Emma stood quickly, still holding Keanu's coat. The nurse didn't even notice him at first, too busy, trying to guide the girl inside. "What happened?" Keanu asked calmly, standing up. "Her mother," the nurse said, her voice urgent. "She just woke up. She's asking for her daughter." Emma gasped. Her hands trembled. "She's awake?" "Yes," the nurse said. "Come on." But just as Emma turned to run, she paused and looked back at Keanu. The coat still hung off her tiny frame, drenched and heavy, but warm. She stepped closer, stood on her tiptoes and wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she ran inside. Keanu stood alone again, the rain still falling, his clothes soaked, his heart full, but as he turned to go back to his car, a voice came from behind. "Excuse me, are you Keanu Reeves?" A man in a hospital coat stood nearby, a strange look in his eyes. It wasn't admiration, it was something else. Urgency. Conflict. Like the man had just recognized more than a celebrity. Keanu looked at him, eyebrows narrowing slightly. "Yes, why?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he said something that froze Keanu in place. "We need to talk about Emma and her mother." That's where the calm ended, and where something much deeper began. The mother's secret. Keanu followed the doctor down a quiet hallway inside the hospital, the sound of their steps echoing faintly against the cold, polished floor. The lights above flickered just slightly, casting a sterile glow that made everything feel more distant, more fragile. Keanu had walked hospital corridors before, but something about this one felt heavier, like each step was drawing him deeper into a story he hadn't meant to enter. The doctor, whose name tag read Dr. Morales, didn't speak for a while. He kept glancing at Keanu, as if trying to confirm something he didn't want to say aloud. Finally, as they reached a quieter wing of the hospital, he stopped near a glass door with blinds drawn shut. "Before we go in," Dr. Morales said, lowering his voice, "I need to tell you something about Emma's mother." Keanu nodded, calm but focused. "Her name is Sarah," the doctor began. "Sarah Lennox. She was admitted 3 days ago, collapsed at a bus stop, severe dehydration, high fever, internal infection. She didn't have any ID at first, but we found a note in her bag. It had 2 things, Emma's name and yours." Keanu blinked slowly. "Mine? Yes," the doctor said. "It was just a first name. If anything happens, find Keanu." We didn't think much of it at first. Could have been coincidence. Until I saw you outside with Emma tonight. That's when it hit me. Keanu's mind raced, but his face didn't change. "I don't know her," he said honestly. "I've never heard of Sarah Lennox." The doctor studied him for a moment. "Maybe not by name, but she knew you. We asked her when she woke up. First thing she said was, 'Did you find Keanu?' 'He'll help Emma.'" Keanu looked through the glass, trying to see past the blinds. Something wasn't adding up, but he felt it. The same way he'd felt drawn to that little girl on the bench. There was a thread connecting them, and now it was pulling tighter. The door opened slowly, and Keanu stepped inside. The room was dim, a single lamp casting a soft glow over the woman in the bed. Sarah Lennox looked older than she probably was, like life had worn her down faster than time should have. Her skin was pale, her lips dry, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. She smiled weakly. "You came," she whispered. Keanu walked to her side, careful, respectful. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else," he said gently. "I don't know you." Sarah's smile didn't fade. In fact, it softened. "You don't remember," she said. "That's okay." She reached slowly toward the nightstand and picked up a small crumpled photograph. Her fingers trembled as she handed it to him. Keanu looked down and froze. It was a picture of him, younger, rough beard, simple clothes, standing beside a food truck. Beside him was a woman, Sarah, unmistakably her, with a newborn baby in her arms. His hand was resting gently on her shoulder. He stared at the photo, his mind struggling to catch up. "You were kind," she said. "You helped me when no one else would. I was homeless. Just had Emma. No family, no shelter. You gave me food, blankets. You said, if I ever needed help again, I should find you." Keanu sat down slowly, the weight of the memory hitting him like a wave. It had been years ago, before one of his film shoots, when he used to quietly volunteer at night shelters without cameras, without announcements. He remembered now. He remembered a young woman with wide, scared eyes and a baby who wouldn't stop crying. He had spent a night talking to her, never asked her name, just helped. "I didn't think you'd remember," Sarah said, "but when I got sick, when I knew I might not make it, I didn't know who else would protect her." Keanu looked at her, heart pounding. "She's all I have," Sarah whispered. "Please, don't let her go back to the system. She's been through too much. You were the only good memory we had left." Keanu didn't speak. His fingers tightened around the photo. At that moment, Emma peeked into the room. Her eyes lit up when she saw her mother sitting up. She ran in and hugged her tightly, tears of relief running down her cheeks. "Mama, I thought you were gone." "I'm still here, baby," Sarah whispered, holding her close. "I'm still here." Keanu watched them quietly, the storm inside, him growing stronger. He had come here thinking he was just stopping to help a child. But now he was part of something much bigger. When Sarah fell asleep again, exhausted, Keanu stepped out into the hallway. The doctor was waiting, arms folded. "What are you going to do?" he asked. Keanu didn't answer right away. He looked down at the photo in his hand, then back at the closed door. "She asked me to protect her daughter," he said finally. "So I will." But just as he turned to leave, the doctor spoke again, this time quieter, more serious. "Keanu, there's something else. Sarah's infection has reached her heart. Even with treatment, she may only have a few days left." The hallway seemed to tilt for a moment. The air felt thinner. "Does Emma know?" Keanu asked. "Not yet," the doctor said. Keanu nodded slowly. "Then we'll make every hour count." But deep down, he knew the hardest part was still ahead, and he wasn't ready for what the next day would reveal. The letter Sarah never sent. The next morning began with a silence too loud to ignore. The city was waking up, but inside the hospital room, everything felt paused. Sarah lay asleep, her breathing shallow but steady, her hand gently resting on Emma's hair as the little girl dozed beside her. Keanu sat in the corner, motionless, watching the two with an expression no one could name. It wasn't sadness, and it wasn't peace. It was something deeper, like he was trying to understand the weight of a moment he had never meant to carry. He hadn't gone home. He hadn't slept. The nurses offered him coffee and blankets, but he barely touched them. Instead, he sat through the night thinking. Thinking about the girl who trusted him without question. Thinking about the woman who had remembered him through years of pain and silence. And thinking about the quiet promise he had made with no idea what it would cost. Eddie Hay. Sunrise. A young nurse came in, holding a small brown envelope. She paused when she saw Keanu awake. I found this in her bag," she said softly. "I think it's important." Keanu took the envelope without a word. It was sealed, worn, and written on the front. In faded ink was just one name, Emma. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of it. Paper shouldn't feel heavy, but this did. He didn't open it. Instead, when Emma finally stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes, he handed it to her gently. "Your mom wrote this for you," he said quietly. Emma looked at the envelope, puzzled. She traced the letters of her name with her finger, like she wasn't sure if she should open it or hold it forever. After a long moment, she carefully pulled it open and unfolded the pages inside. Her lips moved as she read silently. The room stayed still, Even the machines seemed to hush. And as she reached the last line, her face crumbled. Not from panic, but from something worse. Understanding, Keanu leaned forward. "Emma." She shook her head, clutching the letter to her chest. "She knew she was dying," she whispered. "She knew." Keanu stood, kneeling beside her. "She wrote it because she loves you. And she wanted you to know what she couldn't say out loud." Emma nodded slowly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "She said I'm brave," she said. "But I'm not. I'm scared. I don't want her to go." Keanu reached out and held her hand. "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Sometimes, being scared and still loving anyway, that's the bravest thing anyone can do." They sat in silence again. But then Emma looked up, her eyes shining with something different now. Determination. "She said you helped us before. She said you're kind. Does that mean you'll help me again?" Keanu hesitated. Not because he didn't want to say yes, but because he knew what yes would mean. He had always believed in helping quietly, walking through life without needing the spotlight. But this wasn't about belief. This was about a child asking for protection. And he couldn't look away. "Yes," he said finally, his voice steady. "Whatever happens next, I'm here." Emma nodded, wiped her face, and looked back at the letter. Then something slipped out from the pages. A photo. Keanu picked it up. It was another picture. Not from the food truck this time. It was Emma, tiny, in a blanket, and Sarah holding her close. Written on the back were just 4 words. "She is your legacy." Keanu's breath caught in his throat. He stared at the message. Legacy. The word twisted something inside him. He'd spent years giving quietly, living gently, never thinking about legacy. He had never married, never had children, never built a family of his own. And yet, here was a message from a woman he barely remembered, telling him something he couldn't unhear. This little girl was his legacy now. Before he could speak, a sharp alarm rang from Sarah's monitor. The beeping turned into a long, flat line. Nurses rushed in. A doctor followed. Keanu grabbed Emma, pulling her gently back. They watched together, frozen, as the hospital staff tried everything. Compressions, oxygen, medication. But nothing worked. After 7 minutes, they stopped. "Time of death," the doctor said quietly, lowering his head. 7:19 a.m., Emma screamed. Keanu didn't move. He held her as tightly as she needed and let the storm inside her break free. No cameras. No applause, just grief. Pure and unbearable. After a long time, when Emma could cry no more, she looked up at Keanu again. Her voice was hoarse. "Where do I go now?" Keanu didn't answer with words. He just wrapped his arms around her and held her close. He didn't know what the future would look like, but he knew it had already begun. And far away, behind layers of memory and years of silence, a new truth began to rise. Because Sarah's death wasn't the end. It was the door to something bigger, and someone had just opened it. The man in the hallway, the funeral was small, simple. It took place 3 days later in a modest cemetery on the edge of the city, surrounded by tall cypress trees and a sky that looked like it couldn't decide whether to cry or stay dry. A light breeze passed over the mourners, most of whom were hospital staff or strangers who'd seen the obituary in a newspaper. Sarah had no known family, only Emma. And now, Keanu. Emma stood in a quiet black dress that didn't quite fit her, holding a single daisy with both hands. Her eyes didn't blink much. She just stared at the casket as it was lowered into the ground, as if part of her still didn't believe it was real. Beside her, Keanu remained silent, his sunglasses hiding the expression behind his eyes. But his hand never left Emma's shoulder. After it ended, People began to leave. The wind picked up, but Keanu and Emma stayed. She finally spoke, her voice small and cracked. "I don't feel like she's gone. I feel like she's still watching me." Keanu nodded slowly. "Maybe she is." Emma turned to him. "Do you think she knew this would happen?" He looked down at the grave, then back at her. "I think she knew a lot more than she ever said." They stood a while longer. Then, just as they were about to leave, Keanu noticed something. A man, leaning against a tree near the back, dressed in a plain coat, hands in his pockets. He hadn't come close. He hadn't said a word, but he had watched everything. Keanu's eyes narrowed, his instincts stirred. The man wasn't just passing by. Later that evening, back at Keanu's quiet home nestled in the hills, Emma sat on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her, watching old cartoons on a tiny screen. She didn't laugh, but her eyes stayed open, alert, trying to cling to normalcy. Keanu stood in the kitchen, staring at the photo again, the one from Sarah's letter. The words on the back burned in his mind. "She is your legacy." He had never questioned his choices in life, not until now. But something in those words had cracked something open inside him. Something old. Something unfinished. He looked through old notebooks, trying to find anything from that time. Records from the shelter, journal entries, anything. And that's when he found it. A note, dated 9 years ago, tucked between pages in an old leather journal. Girl with baby. Scared. Kind eyes. Didn't ask for help. Just needed it. Gave her my coat. Told her if she ever needed anything again, find me. She smiled. Didn't say her name. His handwriting. He sat down heavily. He had forgotten. But he had also remembered. He didn't get long to think, though, because just before midnight, the doorbell rang. Keanu opened it cautiously, expecting maybe a neighbor, maybe no one. But it was the man from the funeral. Same coat, same stillness. "Can I help you?" Keanu asked, voice calm but guarded. The man gave a slight nod. "I think we need to talk. It's about Sarah and Emma." Keanu stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Who are you?" he asked. The man looked him in the eyes. "I'm her brother." Keanu blinked, stunned. "But the hospital said..." "They didn't know. Sarah and I were estranged. Haven't spoken in years." His voice was steady but filled with regret. "I found out she died only this morning. Read it in the paper. I went to the funeral to make sure it was true." Keanu folded his arms. "Why are you here now?" "Because," the man said, "Emma has an uncle. And that means this isn't just your decision anymore." The words hit like a cold wind. "You weren't there when she needed you," Keanu said quietly. The man didn't argue. "I know, but I'm here now, and I want to do what's right." Keanu studied him. Every instinct told him to protect Emma, to guard her from more hurt. But something about the man's face, his eyes, the pain he didn't try to hide, made him pause. "Emma doesn't know you exist," Keanu said. "I know," the man replied. "And I won't force anything. But if she has family, real family, doesn't she deserve to know?" Keanu looked back at the door, heart heavy. "Give me time," he said. "She's just lost everything." The man nodded. "I'll wait." But as he turned to leave, he said something that stopped Keanu in his tracks. "There's something you should know. Sarah kept a box. Letters, photos. Things from when she disappeared. Some of those, they mention you. More than once. I think she wanted you to know the truth." "What truth?" Keanu asked. The man paused, then looked over his shoulder. "Sarah didn't just remember you, she loved you." Keanu stood frozen in the dark, breath stuck in his throat, watching as the man disappeared into the shadows. And inside, in the living room, a little girl pressed pause on her cartoon. and looked toward the door, because even without hearing the words, she knew something had just changed. The box beneath the floorboards for 2 days. Keanu said nothing about the man from the funeral. He watched Emma closely, spoke gently, kept her routines calm. She didn't ask where he went when he disappeared into the garage each night, or why. He stayed up long after she had fallen asleep with a stuffed bear in her arms, her mother's letter under her pillow. Keanu needed time to think, to feel, to remember. But mostly, he needed to decide what to do with the weight of what he had learned, because the truth wasn't something he could simply ignore now. It lived with them. On the third morning, the man returned, Sarah's brother. This time he came with a worn shoebox wrapped in an old sweater and a hesitant expression on his face. He didn't come inside. He handed it to Keanu on the front steps, saying only one sentence. "She wanted you to have it." Keanu waited until Emma was asleep that night before opening it. The box smelled like old paper and dust. It was filled with photos, some folded letters, a few baby toys, and an envelope addressed to him. Handwritten. His name, clear and simple. He opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Keanu," it began. "You probably don't remember me. We only spoke once, maybe twice, but that moment, it saved me." The letter continued in quiet, honest ink, describing how Sarah had found herself alone, pregnant, with no one to turn to. She had given up hope until that night outside the food truck, when he gave her food and warmth without asking anything in return. "I never forgot your kindness," she wrote. "I carried it with me every day. I told Emma stories about you, called you the man with the gentle eyes. She grew up believing there was someone out there who could be kind for no reason." Keanu paused, swallowing hard. "When I got sick, I was scared. Not of dying, but of her being alone. And when I couldn't find any of my family, I remembered you. I know it's unfair to ask this much, but if anyone could protect her, guide her, I believe it's you." At the bottom of the page, she had written one final line. "Emma deserves a life made from love, not survival." Keanu sat in silence for a long time. Then, at the very bottom of the box, something caught his eye. A smaller envelope, sealed tight, with a legal logo printed faintly in the corner. He opened it carefully and found something unexpected inside. A signed guardianship form. Sarah had listed him, Keanu Reeves, as the emergency guardian for Emma Lennox, dated just 3 months before she was hospitalized. His name, his contact information, his signature space left blank, but it was real. She had planned this, prepared it. Even if he never knew. A knock on the door broke the moment. Emma stood there in her pajamas, eyes sleepy. "I had a bad dream," she whispered. Keanu folded the papers and placed them back in the box before kneeling beside her. "Do you want to talk about it?" She nodded slowly. "I was back at the hospital, and the nurse said I couldn't see her, and no one came, not even you." Keanu felt something in his chest twist. He gently picked her up and carried her to the couch, holding her like she was the most delicate part of the world. "Emma," he said softly, "I need to tell you something important." She looked up, blinking. "Your mom had a brother," he said. "Your uncle. He came to your funeral. He brought this." He pointed to the box on the table. Her face tightened. "Why didn't he come sooner?" Keanu hesitated. He didn't know she was sick. They lost touch a long time ago. Emma looked away. "I don't want anyone else." "I understand," he said. "But you don't have to decide anything now. He just wanted you to know you're not as alone as you thought." "I'm not alone," she said quietly, resting her head against his chest. "I have you." The words hit Keanu harder than he expected. He sat there in silence, the child pressed against him, the box of memories watching from the table, and the guardianship papers whispering the question he could no longer ignore. Was he ready to become a father to a child who wasn't his by blood, but maybe was by fate? He didn't know the answer yet, but someone else did. The next morning, there was another letter in the mailbox. No return address, just a single sentence written on the front in messy handwriting. She is not safe with him. Keanu froze, because the letter wasn't talking about him. It was about Sarah's brother, the man who had shown up claiming to be family, and now something darker was beginning to surface. The truth no one expected. Keanu stared at the envelope, his fingers frozen around its edges. The words on the front felt colder than the morning air, colder than the nights they had endured since Sarah's death. She is not safe with him. 7 words, shaky, rushed, written in black ink that had smudged slightly in the rain. There was no sender, no address, nothing else. Just a warning, a whisper in the dark. He stepped inside the house and locked the door quietly behind him. Emma was still asleep upstairs, tucked beneath a blanket, her tiny hand wrapped around her mother's old necklace. Keanu moved to the kitchen table, laid the envelope down, and stared at it for a long moment. Then carefully, he opened it. Inside was a single page, no greeting, no name, just one paragraph. His name is not Michael Lennox. Sarah told me once he was dangerous. They weren't siblings. He followed her from state to state. She moved 3 times to escape him. I didn't believe her at first, but then he showed up again, asking questions about Emma. She called the police once. After that, she never stayed anywhere long. She was scared. Please protect the child. Keanu's pulse quickened. The man, who claimed to be Sarah's brother, was not her brother, and he had been inside their world. At the funeral, at his front door, he had held Emma's future in his hands and lied. Keanu stood up sharply. His instincts turned from concern to something fierce and protective, like a storm gathering inside his chest. He grabbed his phone and called the lawyer whose name was listed on the guardianship form. 20 minutes later, he had confirmation. Sarah had made it all official. Everything. There had been background checks, statements, even an official note to prevent custody from going to Michael Lennox should he ever come forward. He was a stalker, not family. Keanu called the police next. He gave them everything. The name, the funeral, the visit, the box, and the letter. Officers were sent to track the man down, but by then, it was too late. He had already returned. Keanu stepped out into the yard to find him there, leaning casually against a black car near the curb, arms folded. He smiled when he saw Keanu. "I figured you'd find out," the man said calmly. "I was just hoping you'd say yes first." Keanu's voice was ice. "You need to leave. Now." The man tilted his head. "You don't get it. She was supposed to be mine." Keanu stepped forward. "Emma is not a possession, and you'll never come near her again." "You think you can stop me?" the man said, his voice rising slightly. Keanu didn't answer. Not with words. He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. Sirens echoed in the distance. The man froze, eyes narrowing. "You called them?" he growled. "I told them everything," Keanu said. "You pretended to be her family. You stalked her, and now you threatened a child." The man looked around, panic flickering in his eyes. "They'll never prove it," he said. "They don't need to," Keanu replied, calm as stone. "They just need to stop you from trying again." Police cars pulled up moments later. He didn't resist. Not with witnesses. Not with sirens flashing. Not with the quiet certainty in Keanu's voice. They took him away. And for the first time in days, the air around Keanu felt lighter. That evening, he sat down with Emma on the porch. The sky, glowing soft pink above them. She ate a bowl of soup slowly, her feet swinging above the wooden steps. "Are you okay?" he asked her gently. She nodded. "Just tired, and my heart feels weird." "Mine too," he said. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Mama used to say, sometimes the world tries to break you, but if you find someone good, even one person, you'll be okay." Keanu looked down at her. She was right. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do I still have to go away?" Keanu shook his head. "No, Emma, you're staying with me." Her face lit up in the fading light. "For real?" "For real," he said gently, brushing her hair from her eyes. "We're going to build a life together, one with safety and love, and no more secrets." She hugged him tight, her small arms around his chest like vines around a tree. Months passed. Keanu didn't talk about it in interviews. He didn't let the press near her. What happened between them belonged to them alone. But people noticed something different. His smile came a little easier. He spoke with more warmth. And sometimes, in the background of quiet photos, there would be a little girl with curious eyes and a book in her lap, listening as he read aloud. She brought laughter back to a house that had once known only silence, and he gave her a world where kindness was real and fear was something that lived only in the past. One evening, as they watched stars flicker to life above them, Emma looked up and whispered, "Do you think she can see us?" Keanu put his arm around her. "I know she can," he said. And somewhere, beneath a sky too vast to measure, a woman who once feared she'd leave nothing behind smiled through the stars, because her daughter wasn't alone. She had been found, and her story was finally safe.